Thank you for downloading this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. In this episode, Sam and I offer our 2018-2019 Cavs NBA season preview. We see the return of one of our favorite segments, Overreactions or On Point, and we look ahead to the Week 1 slate of games. Before we jump in, make sure to check out a couple other podcasts, a part of the Press Play Podcast Network, the Orange is Orange or Browns podcast, and the Tim and Shipe Show, a college football podcast. The Orange is Orange or Browns podcast is your premier Browns fan podcast, featuring Browns insider Jeremy Anakron and myself as host. If you're a fan of the Browns and can't get enough of this young, exciting team, check us out. We're available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, make sure to check out the Tim and Shipe Show. They've got all your college football needs covered. We've almost reached the halfway point of the season, and Tim and Shipe have really hit their stride. Make sure to give them a listen and subscribe to their show. You will not be disappointed. All right, enough of my blabbering. You can't wait for it. Here it is, Sam and I's 2018-2019 Cavs NBA season preview. Enjoy the show.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I am your host, Chase Smith, and with me, Cavs insider, national NBA writer Sam Amico of AmicoHoops.net. Sam, 2018-2019 NBA season is finally here. What do you have to say, buddy?
It seems like we'd never even stopped. And you know what, though? It's great. I prefer it this way. As a guy who does a podcast with you and as a guy who runs a basketball website, I'm fine with the season seeming like it never ends. But it's, you know what? Even though that's the case, it seems like it never ends. It's always exciting when it gets going again.
Fresh start. We're recording on a Tuesday night. The season is actually already tipped off. Celtics and Sixers ended. Celtics came with a victory. Warriors are playing now. But let's turn our attention, Sam, to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little season preview, do our overreactions and our on-point segment, and look at Week 1 schedule. Sam, the starting five that we have right now are George Hill, Rodney Hood,
George Hill, Rodney Hood, Jetty
Osman, Kevin Love, and Tristan Thompson, right?
Right.
What we got? J.R. Smith is injured. Is this a lingering injury, or is this? I feel like this is fairly recent.
Yeah, it came out of the blue today, actually, Tuesday. I don't think anybody heard of it. I don't think it's anything. It sure doesn't sound serious. He's doubtful. Doesn't mean he's out. But he's got an elbow issue going on. So, which is interesting because he was. They were planning to bring him off the bench anyway, so who knows how much he was actually going to play against Toronto or how much he will play if he's healthy, not only against Toronto, but moving forward throughout the season.
It's been very in the public's attention in Cleveland at Browns games, at tailgates. JR loving his time in Cleveland. Seems like a lot of the players are kind of breathing a little bit easier. We talked about this in our Media Day episode, how everyone's just kind of like way more relaxed and more of themselves. You see that kind of carrying over through the season?
Yeah, as long as they play well. If you don't play well, it I've been around the NBA long enough that if you're not playing well and you're losing and people start pointing fingers. The Cavs even saw that last year with Isaiah Thomas and Dwayne Wade a little bit. So yeah, I mean, but going into the season, they're considerably more relaxed, obviously, because there comes some stress and some drama, even unintended, from playing with LeBron. It's just every eye is on you, and now all of those eyes, as we have seen, all of those eyes, for the most part, at least from the national perspective, have been removed. So. Chase, I went to. I don't want to keep going, but I went to one preseason game, at the Q, and it was pretty quiet in there, and it certainly was quiet. Now it was a preseason game, but all the national, not just the national reporters aren't there. The international media that had been flocking to Cleveland is now gone. So. The media in Cleveland is Cleveland-based media, and that's it right now.
Let's talk about Larry Nance's extension. He had a 4-year, $44.8 million extension yesterday. He's not starting. Sam, is that surprising to you, or do you see him getting 25 to 30 minutes coming off the bench?
Well, yeah, no, it's not surprising to me. Ty Lue's already talked about he's going to rotate Tristan and Larry Nance as the starting center, depending on matchup. So it's an interesting development because, there's a lot to this team is really reliant on chemistry in terms of, they don't have the one superstar. Kevin Love's an all-star, but he's not a superstar. So they're going to be playing – so much of their success is going to be based on how well they fit together and their chemistry overall. So if that being the case, I would think that eventually Ty Lue's going to have to say, matchup be darned, I'm going to have to either start Tristan or Larry to, get that starting five some chemistry because I think if you're alternating the center on a night-to-night basis, I just don't know that that's going to work in the long run because you need this team. Everything's going to be based on guys being able to fit around each other.
And if Tristan has a slow start to the season like he did last year, it might not take too long for Nance to kind of solidify that starting position year-round. Tristan really slow start last year. That was. I know he was injured a little bit, but just didn't really seem to get going until the end of the season to the playoffs.
Yeah, Tristan, to his credit, he got going at the right time, but it took him, it took Ty Lue basically, and Ty will do this in the playoffs. Hey, you're not getting it done. You haven't been getting it done. You're going to sit. He did that with Shumpert a couple of years ago, Amon Shumpert, and then Shumpert came in the playoffs and played pretty well after being benched for a game. So, yeah, this is very much a starting center competition. They won't say that. Ty Lue's not going to say that, but that's what this is. This is Tristan, and Larry. You guys are – I haven't determined which one of you I want to start long term. So this is kind of like still their audition into the season. And that, that tends to make guys a little more determined.
Yep. Sam, are you surprised that Colin Sexton is in the starting lineup? He had a great summer league. He caught a lot of national buzz and attention at summer league. Really quiet preseason. Are you surprised that he's not in the starting lineup?
No, because I think they really like him off the bench for now. Because he really, I really think, he's looked better than George Hill during the preseason and probably at practice even. But I think that they like the idea of him coming off that bench and being a kind of a fire plug. And it'd be interesting to see him play next to Jordan Clarkson because how Jordan Clarkson plays. He's got one speed and Colin Sexton has one speed. I think Ty is kind of saying, you know what, maybe we'll bring in some of these young guys, particularly those two, and give ourselves kind of that, I don't know what the word is, but just kind of that speed and one-track minds, go, young guys off the bench and see how it goes. I think, look, Ty has talked about this as well. So Sexton is probably ready to start. He probably is. But they can afford to bring him along slowly. I could see the set. I know there's a segment of the fan base that's saying, well, if he's probably ready, why not just play the guy? What are we getting out of George Hill? At the same time, this will give him an opportunity to ease his way into the pro game. And, what's the rush? If the guy is going to be good, he's going to be good and he's going to be here for a long time. If he's not good, which I don't think will be the case. I think worst case scenario, he's kind of like a Monta Ellis type player who can score, drive and score, and if not a great creator. And so he'll be here for a while, I think. But if he's not good, then there's no sense in rushing him along. And I don't think that's the case. I just think that they think, what's the point in making this? Maybe he'll play 40 minutes and George Hill will play 8. So at that point, it doesn't really matter who starts so much at this point. But remember, Colin's just 19 years old, so he's got a lot to learn.
Maybe have him in the second unit, start to build some confidence against other second unit type players, maybe ease him in that way. But I'm getting shades and flashbacks to Tyrod versus Baker. Very similar situation here. And I can't help but think if Baker had started the first couple of games, we might be 4-2 right now instead of 2-3-1. And if Colin Sexton is head and shoulders better than George Hill in every facet of the game, defense, offense, playmaking ability, being able to put points on the board, I don't know why they wouldn't be putting him out there. I mean, some players, Sam, some players, they just can't come off the bench. They just have to start, and it's hard to come off the bench. Do you see this being a problem, or
Well, the difference between the NBA and football, of course, is Baker Mayfield, when he doesn't start, he sits the whole game.
Right.
Unless
they'll see Sexton play. Unlike Baker, you just saw him warm up.
Sexton, you are going to see him play, and again, he could play a lot. He could play a lot more than George Hill. I suspect that he's going to play quite a bit next to George Hill, and that was kind of a consideration going into camp. Is can Sexton play? Alongside, can the Cavs run a 2-point guard system? But George obviously is kind of their Tyrod Taylor. He's been around.
Yeah.
He's played in. George has played in some big games. He started in the finals. He
missed a free throw in the finals.
he missed a big free throw in the finals. But the point is that
you know what you're going to get.
Well, in the NBA, right. In the NBA, you have 82 games, and you get about the first 15, 20 to kind of get things figured out and put it together. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's what Ty Lue is going to do. He's going to say, you know what, let's see how this goes. Sexton may be a better player off the bench for them right now. And usually coaches are going to give themselves the best chance to win. So Ty is putting the lineup out there that he sees these players at practice every day. We don't see them. We don't see them at practice. We see little bits and pieces of them in preseason games, but he sees them at practice every day, and he's going to determine, hey, which lineup do I feel like is going to give us the best chance to win, and which reserves do I feel like is going to give us the best chance to win on a night-to-night basis. So I think fans are really going to like Sexton no matter where and when he plays. I really do, because he's a ball of fire.
Cannot wait. One final topic here before we get to our segment, Overreactions or On Point. Sam, the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, the Cavs have always been buyers at the trade deadline. Do you see the Cavs maybe for the first time in a while having the same team all year, or are we going to be making some moves either now or later in February or during the season? What do you think could be in store for this team as far as transactions?
That's a great unknown, and Chris Grant, the Cavs former GM, once told me, that type of thing, trades and how you're going to go about them, are such a hard thing to predict because you're dealing with other people. You're dealing with teams, and those teams are run by people as opposed to robots or a vacuum cleaner where you push the button and you want it to turn on, it turns on, it works for you. Well, when you're making trades or making deals, you've got to factor in other people's emotions, and they're trying to protect their assets and all that. So, but to answer your question, Chase, I think a lot of it's going to be how the season plays out. We're going to know after 25, 30 games what their direction they're going to go. If they're playing well and it looks like, hey, we can give our fans a regular season full of fun, and we're going to have to get back into the draft and try to get into the lottery on draft night, which you can do on draft night. They're still going to have these same guys that are tradable on draft night. So if things are going well, say they're 15-10 and looking good and having fun after 25 games, then they may take on a piece, but I doubt that. I think that no matter what happens at trade deadline, a lot of those contenders are going to come to them and say, in February, early February, and say, you know what, we really need a shooter. You got Kyle Korver, a guy who's played in big games. And the Cavs are going to say, okay, give us a young player or a draft pick or something along those lines. So
we really need some more depth to miss a free throw. What can you get for George Hill?
But you're still upset about that. I see you've gotten over that, Chase.
Yeah.
I would say I would say that there's those things are going to be a lot of it's going to be determined how the season plays out. And I think the Cavs are probably one of the top 2 or 3 biggest mysteries heading into the season.
I would agree. Does the Hawks protected top 10 pick from us play a part in that, Sam? If we see that we're going to lose that pick, would we maybe get a couple extra pieces to get out of the lottery? Do you see that happening? I think that is kind of like a dark horse in this season, right? The Hawks will get our pick if it's top 10. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I think that it's that pick is obviously on the Cavs' minds. It's the draft is going to the top 4 or 5 guys that are supposed to enter the draft after the season. You never know until the college basketball season plays out. But right now, this draft is supposed to be pretty top heavy. That once you get the top 7, 8 guys, then once you move beyond that, there's not supposed to be much. But that's all predictions. Nobody can predict how the college season can play out. I remember when Harrison Barnes was all the rage, Austin Rivers was all the rage before a college season, and then by the end of the season, they were still, I think, maybe top 10 picks, but they weren't guys who changed. Last year, going into the college season, everybody was like, "Hey, you got to get Michael Porter," but he's got that back issue. So it's hard to tell. I will say, though, right now the Cavs are entering the season. Like it or not, they're entering the season. Let's see what this group can do, how far it can go, and maybe prove everybody wrong. Can we be the Indiana Pacers of last year?
Yeah.
These are questions they're asking them. Can we be the Utah Jazz of last season?
Yeah.
Can we be the Denver Nuggets the year after they traded Carmelo and came out like gangbusters and gave their fans a regular season full of fun, sold tickets, filled the stadium, filled the arena?
Yeah.
That's on their minds right now. Can they do that? If they find out they can't, well, then, they'll figure out a way to to not be very good.
I think the Utah Jazz, I think that there's a world where that is our reality, where Sexton is our Donovan Mitchell, and we all of a sudden we have this defensive identity that we've never had before. And I can see that happen. I can see that happening with the Pacers too. Depot and Sexton, maybe they're the same kind of player. We don't know. But it is one of the few mysteries in the league. You just never know what you're going to get with the Cavs this season. But I'd have to think that Hawks pick has got to be on their minds, at least the front office minds. It's on the Hawks' minds for sure. I think the Hawks are banking on that pick not being good, the way that they set up Trae Young to fail this year, right?
Well, I think that, both those teams are going to be that's on your mind, especially if you're the Hawks. But, look, you can trade. The one thing that I know Kobe Altman is thinking is, the guys that we have now that we can trade and get draft picks from a team, we can still trade those guys come the February 7th or come draft night, and I think that but yes, they would love to keep that top, stay in the lottery, but I don't think at any expense, because so often teams make that mistake of just going in the tank and creating a losing culture. I mean, Sacramento Kings have been playing the lottery for 115 years, and I don't know that that's the answer. I really don't. Maybe it is. Hey, look, the New Orleans Pelicans have Anthony Davis, who is an MVP type player, but what is it doing for their franchise? Are they moving forward or not? And I just think that there's a real danger in getting caught up and saying you need the tank, you need to go in the tank, only because once you decide to do that, it's very rare that you come out of it quickly. It's very rare, and then you're tanking when you don't want to be for 4 or 5 years after that. So
you got to strike gold in the draft.
You got to strike gold in the draft and be smart when you draft.
Your cap. Yep, you got to make good moves. I mean, it's more than just a stud in the draft. Obviously, you can see you have Anthony Davis, and they're still trying to get over the hump in the West. So
there's a lot of players like that, and at the same time, you can also look at a lot of players who have been drafted late who went on to become absolute studs. So, I can't remember who the GM was once who told me you don't have to draft number 1 overall, but you do need to make the most of your draft picks that you have. And if you do that, then then you'll be in business. So I think right now it's in the back of their minds, but it's certainly not in the front of their minds, the draft.
Sam, let's move ahead to a segment we like to call overreactions or on point. Very simple. I'm going to give you a statement. You kind of share if it's an overreaction or if it's on point, and you tell me why. Vegas has the Cavs win total for the season at 30 and a half games, 30.5 games. They think the Cavs are going to win 30 and a half games. Here's a statement, Sam. The Cavs will win 40 games and make the East playoffs. Is that an overreaction or on point?
I think it's on point, and I know people are going to call me crazy, but I think it's on point. If number one, they're playing in the East. Number two, okay, Boston, Philly, Toronto. Name me the definite number four. People will say, okay, maybe Indiana, and I love Indiana. Milwaukee, maybe. Washington, maybe. There's Miami in there, which to me is no sure bet to make the playoffs. Detroit, no sure bet. So I think that, the East is still pretty weak after those first three. And I think Toronto is a team you don't know what to expect from either. So to me, it's not, saying you make the playoffs in the East is still not something that you have to be great to do. So I think if the Cavs decide that they want to play well and stay with it, or as opposed to Ty Lue's line of no tanking, if they stick with that philosophy, they have every bit of a chance to win 40 games. They sure do.
I think when you start naming those teams, you think you start just going by what teams are good at. I know the Bucks have Giannis. No other team has Giannis, and so you probably can pencil him into the playoffs at some seed. I think the Heat. I think Spoelstra is an incredible coach. I think.
Yes.
He can make a lot out of nothing, and he has for the past couple years. And if they make a couple moves, I think they have a pretty good chance of making the playoffs.
Well, they've got at some point, I think they're probably going to get Butler. I really do. I think at some point, that's where he wants to go. And Pat Riley is a guy who tends to make those type of deals. So that's one thing to consider with Miami is eventually I would think that they're going to get Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. So it's Boston, Philly, Toronto, and in some order, and then if we put Bucks, Miami,
Indiana.
Oh yeah, Indiana for sure. That's 6. I'd put Indiana above Miami.
I think you got to put Washington in there too. So there's 7.
Yeah.
Although Washington has the potential to have a total meltdown.
They really do.
And you know what? Again, love the Pacers, love the style of play, and I don't think this will happen. But again, they've had one run. You know what I mean? You don't know how you follow that up. Last year they were surprised. They were really determined, caught people off guard. That's not going to happen this season. How do they react to that? There are some great unknowns in the East. How will Toronto? Obviously, Toronto is going to make the playoffs, but another thing you'll always have to consider too is health. Is a lot of these teams, Milwaukee, probably in Indiana, probably in Washington. A lot of those teams are one injury to a key guy, which you hate to see, but the truth is these aren't super deep teams where they can afford to lose their one main guy. And if that were to happen, well, then that opens things up. So, I think if the Cavs decide they've got enough veteran winning experience that if they decide that they want to try to get in the playoffs, they probably can.
I love it. It might be an overreaction, but I think it's on point, man. I love it. 40 games in the playoffs. Let's freaking go. Let's go. Colin Sexton will win the Rookie of the Year. Overreaction or on point?
No, overreaction. I don't. I like Colin's game. I think he's going to be a nice player, but gosh, this draft has just been had a lot of good players in it, and I just think that he's one of the guys who does have a veteran playing in front of him, but. Yeah, that's a good way to get everyone mad at me by saying that he won't, but I don't think he will. I'm just being honest.
I think this draft has a chance as being a very, very deep and solid draft. A lot of really solid NBA players could come out of this draft if everyone plays up to their potential.
It could be one of the
guard. It really could be the changing of the guard in the league. Chetty Osman will win Most Improved Player.
I'd say that's an overreaction, although I think he'll certainly be a candidate because, look, if this team does finish with like the 5th or 6th seed in the Eastern Conference and he's a starter on the team, he's going to be a fan favorite without question. He is the guy who, everybody loves to have an Anderson Varejao, Matthew Dellavedova type of guy who is just go, 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 nonstop, defends, likes to defend, and just plays with such a great spirit and great attitude. I think Chetty's going to have every opportunity. He's going to get every opportunity. And look, I mean, he practiced with LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Kawhi Leonard, the holy trinity of small forwards in the NBA, and Chetty Osman. So I think that I think that he's really going to have an opportunity to take a major step, and if he does, that's good news for the Cavs. Great news.
Sam, one of the I think conversations that's getting overlooked a lot talking about the Cavs, and one that I think is one of the most important statements that we could really talk about. Maybe Kevin Love will have an All NBA type season. Overreaction or on point?
Oh, on point. I think Kevin is. He's an All NBA type of player. I don't know that it'll be All NBA first team, but he'll be.
There's 3 teams. He has 3 shots.
Yeah, I think that he has a shot. He should. He's going to have to put up great numbers. Actually, not even should. He's going to have to. The one concern, and I thought that he looked very comfortable in that first preseason game. Now, granted, it was preseason game, but he looked very comfortable in that role of the main man on this team. And I think that he has an opportunity to number one, the big concern with Kevin is always health. He's always injured for an extended period of time. And if that happens, they will go right in the tank. They just don't have enough winning experience other than him. But he's certainly going to get the opportunity to put up huge numbers like he did in Minnesota. And if he puts up those type of numbers, yeah, absolutely, he'll be one of the best forwards, considered one of the best forwards in the NBA without question.
I think as Kevin Love goes, I think probably the Cavs will go.
Yes,
it's just a matter of we don't have much firepower. We don't have a lot of grace in that area. And Kevin Love is on. I think we're going to be a challenging team to kind of beat. But if he's having an off night, then I think it's really going to be tough. I can see that happen. I can see Kevin Love having an all NBA type season. I'm anxious to see how he transitions to a new front man, the first person to go to in crunch time.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm excited to watch him kind of revert back to Minnesota Kevin Love.
It'll take some getting used to for him. I mean, he spent the last 4 years being third fiddle and then second fiddle, and after being top fiddle. But we heard Chris Bosh say this about playing with LeBron in Miami, is that it's tough to be a power forward and play with LeBron. As much as you love him and appreciate him and he does great things for you, it's tough playing that position because LeBron is kind of a power forward himself, even though he brings the ball up and plays point guard. A lot of times, Bosh struggled with that offensively, and then the minute LeBron left, Bosh had a huge year. So I would expect the same same out of Kevin Love. You'd obviously rather have LeBron, but I think if you're Kevin Love, this is your opportunity really to take the ball and take over games and all that.
Well, that was the greatest segment of all podcast history. I'll let you decide if that's an overreaction or on point. Sam, thanks.
On point. Oh, you weren't asking me? Okay.
Really quick to look at our week 1 schedule. We start tomorrow, Wednesday, October 17th. Cavs visit Toronto, 7:30 p.m. tip-off. Friday, October 19th. Cavs visit Minnesota and go off against Tibbs, Wiggins, and the like. And then
Butler in Minnesota. Minnesota's home opener after this off-season of drama up there. And the Cavs, Kevin Love's return was supposed to be the news, but now instead you're going to have the home fans booing Jimmy Butler. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting game to open.
And then Sunday, October 21st, Cavs home opener against the Hawks at home at 6. Sam, what is the toughest matchup for Week 1 slate here for the Cavs?
Toronto. At their place. You got Kawhi Leonard healthy. You've got a team that's played together. I mean, they did make that huge trade with, they no longer have DeMar DeRozan, but you have Kawhi Leonard, who's a better player than DeMar DeRozan, and you still have Lowry and Ibaka and those other guys who have played together. Toronto's one of the better. Their bench really came alive last year, so they're a deep team, going to be tough to beat on the road in the opener in your first game where you're like, okay, where's LeBron? We got to get him the ball, so that's going to be really tough. Minnesota, maybe you can go in there, steal one because of all their issues, and hey, look, if you're the Cavs, if you're the Cavs, you should be, you could be 2-1. I don't want to say should be, but you could very well be 2-1 after this first week. You definitely want to beat Atlanta at home. Nobody's going to be paying attention to that game because the Browns are playing at Tampa Bay. So, people will still be talking about the Browns game when the Cavs tip off. But, I think that Toronto would definitely be the toughest for obvious reasons.
We talked about it briefly in the slate rundown. What narratives will you see the Cleveland media or Twitter or even other media people, Sam, say about this week of games?
The usual dose of negativity and, people aren't very – I actually was laughing looking at Twitter after the Sixers lost, ended up losing. I think it was by 18 to the Celtics. Actually played pretty well for the most part, but it's like they're opening at Boston. It's just a tough play, and the teams get blown out just because they get blown out. But of course, Sixers they've got a lot of work ahead of them. And I'm just man, there's 81 more of these games. No matter whether you win or lose, it's just you can't get too fired up one way or the other. It's just like the Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar story when Magic was a rookie and Kareem hit a shot in his first game that won the game over the Clippers, and Magic was like grabbing him and cheering and wrapped around his neck, and Kareem said, "Get off me, rookie! We got 81 more of these," So, of course, Magic was like that his entire career, but it just goes to show you can't get too fired up. But look, Chase, I've been around the media my whole life and following this and been involved with it, and that just tends to be not only fan overreaction, right. But media overreaction, and very rarely are they on point. So, but you know what? That's just the nature of the game. There's a lot of passion involved.
The first slate of games without LeBron, part 2. What are you looking to see the Cavs team work on or look like here in Week 1?
They're going to struggle. They say we want to be a team that moves the ball, that shares the wealth, that zips the ball around. That's going to be tough. It's easy to say, but then teams, it's a lot different when opponents start bodying you up, getting physical, making your passes, cutting off the passing lanes. And it's going to take some, a while to get used to, because most of the key players who are back are used to playing with LeBron. So if the ball wasn't zipping, that's okay. You get it to your main guy and he'll take over. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a struggle early. I think they're going to want to do it. They say they want to do it, and probably after a loss, they'll say we need to move the ball around better. We didn't do it. But other teams are going to have a say in that. So the key is just, if you're the Cavs, not to give up on that, because that's what you're going to have to do to win. You're going to have to play with a lot of energy. You're going to have to play with a lot of determination. You're going to have to play with that chip on their shoulder, which I predict they will do, is play with a chip on their shoulder. Because imagine, you're playing in a rec league and your best player switches teams and all you hear is, "You guys stink. You're terrible." Well, do you go into games thinking, "Well, we're just going to stink. We're terrible now"? You don't think that. You're like, "I'm going to prove everybody wrong." And that, I can tell you to a man, is what they are thinking. Yep. So I think that they're going to play with great determination, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a process, getting used to this new style of offense that has looked very good in practice from what everybody says, not just the players, but people who observe practice.
Yeah.
They've really been zipping the ball around. And I think we saw in that first preseason game against Boston when they had everybody, it actually worked. They were actually doing some back screens and some getting layups under the basket. And I think once they get comfortable in that, it could work out pretty well. But it might be an issue early. Defensively, I'm very interested to see if they can conquer some of those defensive issues they had last year, Chase, as well as those third quarter issues. They come out in the third quarter really flat. Hopefully, for their sake, that is those things are a thing of the past.
Yep. Do you stand by the you kind of mentioned it briefly, your 2-1 record for week 1 here, Sam?
No, I'm going to go 3-0. I'll go 3-0, I think. Well, Toronto's kind of new. They're going to get used to each other. I think this is where everybody turns off the podcast and says Amico's nuts, but which wouldn't be the first time. But I think that they're going to play with a lot of determination, and probably more determination than other teams in the early going, because they really have a lot to prove, not to just the world, but to themselves, that you know what, we're going to be okay. And you often see this. You saw it last year with Utah without Gordon Hayward. You saw it with Indiana after the Paul George trade. Everybody said Indiana is going to stink, play for the lottery, blah, 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 blah. And look what they did. They gave their fans it was a real treat for their fans, and I think that's what every team really sets out to do. Is to say, you know what, we're going to play competitive basketball, and you know what, you don't need to worry about it, because guess what, you weren't going to beat the Warriors anyway. You couldn't beat them with LeBron, so you don't need to worry about this whole championship business, because it wasn't happening for you anyway. And now you just play hard, play smart, and see where that takes you. And if it doesn't work out, well, the trading deadline's February 7th. You got the team in clean house, and you start over.
Yep, I'm going to say my brain is telling me to say 1-2, but my heart's telling me 2-1. I don't know if I can do 3-0, man, but I really
just don't go 0-3.
Right. That'd be bad, man, to lose to the Bucks. Well, that does it for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. You can follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Catch all of his work and writings at amicohoops.net and prohoopsdigest.com for all breaking news, insider info. Don't miss out. Hey, we also want to know your thoughts. Let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a review. Subscribe on iTunes. It really does help with other search algorithms. If you could just subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and just leave us a very nice comment about what you like about the show. Be great to hear from you. We're also looking for sponsors this season. If you have a business or online venture, shoot us an email at podcast@cavsonthebreak.com. We'll get with you as we look for sponsors for our segments and our weekly slate recaps and previews. Sam, any final thoughts before we head off into tip-off here tomorrow?
No, I think, as maybe disappointed as a lot of fans are, obviously, that LeBron decided not to stick around. There is pro basketball in Cleveland, and I think that this is going to be a season for Cavs fans that, is worth following this team and seeing where they go from here. I think that if you enjoy basketball, the team is still here, the franchise is still here, they're not going anywhere, and you can still have a lot of fun watching this team, I assure you.
It's going to be fun growing with the team as they kind of figure this out. A lot of young guys, and I'm excited, Sam. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks for getting on tonight.
All right. Hey, we'll talk to you very, very soon now that the season has arrived.
That's right. Every week, we're bringing you guys an episode. All right, Mike Breen, take us out!
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.